Chapter 2 Spotter. The smell awoke Cosmo. The bitter, pungent aroma of a nearby sim coffee pot had sent his nostrils twitching. Even though the smell was not unpleasant, it was too much for his raw senses. Everything had made the headache worse. The rasp of material, the light hammering in his eyelids, and now the smell. But even worse was the pain and the thirst. Cosmo tried to open his mouth, but his lips were dry gummed together. A frustrated moan escaped through his nose. Footsteps approached across the hard-sounding surface. "Okay, bueno," said a voice, female. "Welcome to Abracadabra Street." A wet cloth brushed his lips, breaking the seal. Cosmo opened his mouth, squeezing the material beneath his teeth. The water tasted like life, trickling down his throat. "Easy, not too much." Cosmo opened his eyes a crack, squinting against the glare of sunlight. The girl was ringed by a corona of white light. For a second he thought, but no. It was the girl from the roof. The roof? "Welcome back. Though the way you're going to be feeling for a couple of days, maybe you'd rather be dead." Cosmo remembered it all then. The crash, the climb, the fall. "Ziploc," croaked Cosmo, his voice alien and distant. The girl scratched her forehead, stretching the DNA strand tattooed on her forehead. Cosmo knew that the tattoo was the signature of one of the various Satellite City street gangs. The ink was probably loaded with an isotope that could be tested by a bar scanner. This prevented police infiltration. "Ziploc," she said. "You got the energy for one word, and that's the word you peak?" Cosmo felt a single tear crawl down his cheek. Ziploc had been just about the closest thing he had to a friend. The girl saw the tear and made a connection. She winced at her own blunder. "Ah, I'm sorry. Ziploc, that was your friend's name? Is he—" "Sorry, kid. He was gone when we got there. We left him behind, remember?" Cosmo raised his arm. The only thing around his wrist was a bandage. "The electricity feels part of the cuff to your skin. Dito had to peel it off. You're lucky they veined it in pulp." Cosmo didn't feel so lucky, and it wasn't just his wrist. "In fact, Dito had to do quite a bit of work on you. You never would have made it to a hospital, so we had to use whatever was lying around. Your painkiller drip was a bit past the sell date, but hey, it didn't kill you." Cosmo consulted a wall monitor over Cosmo's bed. Mona consulted a wall monitor over Cosmo's bed. "Dito glued the Achilles tendon in your left ear and replaced your right kneecap with growth bone." Cosmo nodded, aghast. We also had to go into your chest and plastic coat a few of your ribs. I took the staples out this morning. And of course, I had to shave your head." "What?" Mona shrugged. "It was either that or let your brain fall out on the floor. Luckily for you, Dito had a couple of robotics plates lying around. He used one to patch your fractured skull. Those robotics plates are made of the same material used to armor assault tanks. When your skin heals, Dito says you'll be able to headbutt your way through a brick wall." Did Cosmo remember something? "Ditto, the little boy." Mona glanced over her shoulder. "Shh! Don't call him that. He's very touchy." The girl stepped forward, lowering her voice. "Dito is a Batari baby. That little boy is 28 years old." Now it made sense. Dr. Ferdinand Bartoli's genetic experiments were an infamous chapter in modern history. The doctor had performed gene slicing experiments on a batch of infants in an attempt to create a superhuman. Instead, he corrupted the baby's own DNA, resulting in a series of mutations. ESP was one side effect, but the most common was the rest of physical development. The Bartoli scandal led to the outlaw of gene experimentation for more than 10 years. Cosmo gingerly rubbed his bristling scalp. A section of his forehead still felt hard and stifled. "There are pressure release pores in that plate, so don't work anything through the skin." Robotics plates in his head and Bartoli babies. It was almost too much to take in. "Anything else?" "That's about it. Of course, there are still 100 or so staples and various cuts and bruises, but I disguised them all with skin spray. All in all, you're a lot worse than you look." But not worse than I feel, thought Cosmo. Mona peeled the foil from a patch and stuck it to his arm. The best thing for you is rest and recuperation. This sedative patch should keep you out for a while. The next time you wake up, you might even be able to walk around a bit. No, protested Cosmo, but it was too late. The sedative was already seeping into his bloodstream. Nighty-night, said Mona gently. Cosmo's limbs felt weightless. His head wobbled like a toy dog's. Nighty-night, he wobbled. But maybe he only thought it, because the world was dripping down his eyeballs like wet oil paint down a canvas. Cosmo woke again about 5 seconds later, or so it seemed. But that couldn't be right, because the halogen strip lights were on, and muffled stars poked from beneath the smog around old-fashioned hanging curtains. Not many people used the curtains anymore. Generally, reactor light glass came with the building. Cosmo ran through his memories, as though they were files on a computer screen. Who was he? Cosmo Hill, 14 years old, fugitive no sponsor. Who was he? Where was he? A warehouse, maybe, rescued by a band of creature hunters. A tall teenager, a Latina girl, and a Bartoli baby. Could that be true? It seemed impossible. Could he become part of the strange band? Was that he wanted? Cosmo's brain started to a halt. What did he want? This was a question that nobody ever asked him. He rarely asked of himself. The only thing he ever wanted was to escape from Clarissa Frayne, and now that he was out, he had no idea what to do next. But Cosmo did know one thing with absolute certainty. He was never going back to Clarissa Frayne. Never. Cosmo checked his injuries. The pain was still there. Muted, but there. Like a troll under the bridge, ready to pounce if he moved too quickly. The bandage was gone from his wrist. His entire forearm was covered in skin spray. After several minutes of basic breathing and blinking, Cosmo decided to put his stems to the test. He sat slowly, dizzy from the sedative patch stuck to his arm. He peeled it off, checking the sponge. White, no more juice. That explained why he was awake. His new knee was covered with a plexicast. The transparent cast was filled with an anti-inflammatory that would accelerate the healing process. A green LED over the cast's X-ray panel told him that the leg was safe to walk on. Cosmo tested the ground like a swimmer testing Arctic waters. His knee twinged, but nothing more. He must have been out for at least 48 hours for the cast to have done its job. His forehead was a different story. Every movement, however slight, sent a steel of nail pain hammering into his skull. Almost as bad as the pain was the edge of the new skin going over the robotics plate in his forehead. He gritted his teeth and began walking. His initial target had been a jug of filtered water on the table 5 yards away. Not exactly a marathon, but not bad, considering what he'd been through. Cosmo almost reached the table. He would have made it too, if it hadn't been for one thing. A steel mirror bolted to the wall. Cosmo caught himself of his own reflection, and for a moment thought there was someone else in the room. His dry lips parted to form a single syllable. Oh. The figure in the glass reminded him of a war child from those history vids, battered and thin, haggard and hangdog. He looked like a miniature Frankenstein's monster, cobbled together from various parts, none of them the right size. Some of them not even intended for humans. His head was especially grotesque, completely shaven, with a dozen staple scars crisscrossing the scalp. The robotics plate in his forehead bulged slightly beneath the swollen skin. The pressure pores clearly outlined against the pinkish tissue. The only things they recognized were the wide-spaced round brown eyes. Cosmo completed his journey shakily, grasped the jug with both hands, and drank from the neck. Most of the water splashed down in his front, but some went in. Everything was being fixed, he told himself. It was all temporary. But not for Ziploc. It was too late for his friend. Ziploc. His friend should have been there with him. But where was he exactly? Cosmo looked around for the first time. He was in a large, open warehouse constructed from pig iron polymer. The windows were tall and thin, church-style, with blackout curtains hanging on each side. Workbenches and electronic equipment littered the concrete floor, and power cables fell from every wall socket like multicolored snakes. Various cubicles were sectioned off by the mobile dividers, and a dozen hard drives hummed inside the makeshift rooms. But no people. Beside him, the warehouse was completely deserted. Cosmo moved slowly, getting used to his new knee. There was a kitchen area in the corner, nothing cozy, There's a 2-ring burner, molded garden furniture, and a pot of steamed coffee. A bunch of lilies lay on the table, cellophane wrapped, with a bubble of water at the base. Real flowers. Expensive. There was a card stuck between the two of the lilies. Mother, it read, I miss you more than ever. A set of steel cuffs lay on the bench beside the simulator. Cosmo felt a lump in his throat. The last remaining evidence that Francis Murphy had ever lived. And he didn't even know his real name. Let's go, Francis, he said, picking up the cuffs. It's time you saw the city. One of the warehouse windows faced across the river toward Satellite City's famous downtown skyline, dominated by the cylindrical Maishi Tower. The Kessi-Kola building visible from across the bay, as well as animated by computer-generated rising bubbles, and a red light winked in the statue of Endeavor's stone hand, an 800-foot colossus pointing at the satellite overhead. Cosmo climbed through the window on a balcony, trying to get his bearings. Judging by the position of the Journey River, he was somewhere on the west side. The piercing wail of sirens and the overhead thwoop-thwoop of police birds confirmed this theory. Cosmo dangled the cuffs over the edge. There should be something to say, something special to mark Ziplock's passing. Cosmo thought for several moments, but he couldn't find any words to describe how desolate he felt. Maybe that was the point. How could any words capture feelings like these? He knew how he felt, and that's what was important. Cosmo tossed the cuffs into the satellite city air, and they twinkled through the neon like shooting stars. Cosmo's host seemed to go from one crisis to the next. He had barely latched the window behind him when it burst through the elevator's grill, bearing a shopping cart before them. Mona was folded into the cart. Her skin had a greenish tinge, and she was shivering violently. Cosmo hobbled after them. What happened? Stefan didn't answer. He cleared the laminated workspace with a sweep of one arm. Close the curtains, he shouted. Cosmo pointed to the reactor light control panel beside the window. But the glass! Why not just... Because the police birds see right through reactor light. That's why it comes with the building. Get it? Cosmo held the sackcloth curtains across the windows. Seconds after he had finished, a government bird swept past the building. Cosmo heard an electronic crackle as the windows were remotely depolarized. With the curtains open, the room would have been exposed, which was fine, so long as nobody was fleeing the scene of a crime, which they obviously were. Stefan was bent over Mona. Her slim frame was racked with pain. Every muscle and tendon was stretched tight. Long streams of Spanish floated from her bloodless lips, and her black, sweat-drenched hair slapped the table like strands of seaweed. Ditto hopped on the table, pulled a screwdriver from his belt, and jammed the tool into Mona's mouth, to stop it from swallowing her tongue. I don't know what this is, he admitted. This is a new one on me. I've never seen this strain before. He peered at the adhesive back from her thermostrip, sticking it to her forehead. She's on fire, he said, reading the temperature of the strip. Going critical. Get the bucket of ice, said Stefan to Cosmo. Whatever you can carry. Cosmo lurched over to the refrigerator, emptying a fire bucket of sand on the floor. He jammed the rim against the fridge's ice dispenser toggle, watching the cubes rattle out with infuriating stillness. Come on! It took almost a minute to fill the bucket halfway. That would have to do. Ignoring the pain in his knee, Cosmo hurried back to the table. Stefan grabbed the bucket and began packing the ice inside Mona's clothes. Ditto's gaze remained fixed on the thermostrip. It's not working! 112 and still rising! No! Shouted Stefan, his feet just turned before the... We need to take her to the hospital. What hospital? Snorted Ditto. I've worked with them in every hospital in the city, remember? There's something but general on the west side. And believe me, if I don't know how to fix something, they don't know how to fix it either. Cosmo peered in around Stefan's frame. Mona's convulsions grew more violent. Green tendrils spread across her eyeballs. Should we give her an antibiotic? Wondered Stefan aloud. We have to try something. No! Cosmo blurted. The word was out before he could stop it. Ditto hopped down from the table. No? What do you know, kid? Cosmo's pains and aches picked that moment to come back. I don't know. Something, maybe. I've seen this before at the Institute. What happened to her? We don't have time for this, said Stefan. We have to take her to General. Take our chances. Ditto stood up to the tall boy, a molehill facing down the mountain. Take our chances? By the time we get her processed, she's dead. You know as well as I do. Let's hear what the boy has to say. Now, kid, what do you need to know? Cosmo avoids Stefan's gaze. Just what happened? How'd she get this way? Stefan knitted his brow. There was an explosion at a composite chemical plant. We were doing a sweep for parasites. Some of the local marshals called us, and one got a dot into Mona. She's been getting worse ever since. Cosmo racked his brain. By law, private marshals were not licensed to carry guns. They got around the problem by arming themselves with non-lethal lightning rods that fired cellophane slugs or various chemical darts. The darts were clever because they were technically non-lethal, as long as you stayed around for the antidote. What color was the dart's casing? Ditto frowned. Casing? I'm not sure. Green, maybe? With a white stripe along the side? Maybe. I can't swear. Yes, said Stefan. A white stripe. I remember pulling it out of Vasquez's leg. Green and white. Cosmo closed his eyes, remembering the institute. Those composite darts were tested at chlorifrane. I remember now. The green and white ones were the worst. We called them creepers. The guys were sick for hours, even after they got the antidote. The institute's plumbing got all backed up. One guy found a cure, though. He ate a moldy sandwich. It felt better. It wasn't bread, it was the mold! Completed Ditto. Of course! This is a flora virus. Cellulose will shut it down. We need some plants. Ditto looked over to the cellophane wrapped flowers. Here, over here. Here. He pulled a single flower from the bunch and ripped the lily's stem and leaves into bite-sized pieces, cramming some into his own mouth. The rest he handed to Ditto, who did the same. Stefan grabbed another bloom, folding the stem into his mouth. They chewed furiously, ignoring the acrid taste seeping down their throats. The stems were tough, splitting into stringy lanes and refusing to be broken down. But Cosmo and the others persisted, grinding the strings between their molars. Green juice dribbled over their chins. Finally, they spat wads of green paste into their palms. Do the wound, Cosmo instructed. The Bartali baby ripped Mona's trousers apart, spitting the goo directly into the puncture mark on the girl's thigh. Stefan added his wad of paste to the wound, kneeing into the inflamed hole. Cosmo removed the screwdriver from Mona's mouth, force-feeding the paste between chattering teeth. Mona gagged and shuddered, her body naturally rejecting the plant, but Cosmo rubbed her windpipe until she swallowed. Gradually, more and more green ooze slipped down the girl's throat. By the time he was finished, Cosmo's fingers were chewed bloody. For what seemed like an eternity, there was no change in Mona's condition. Then, 111, said Ditto. She's peaked. Mona's eyes continued rolling, but the green tendrils pulsed gently, then disappeared. Ditto checked the thermostrip. 108. It's working. Grab me if it isn't. Something flickered in Mona's eyes. Recognition? 100. 99. The girl's slight frame slumped into the table. Gradually, tension lost its grip on her muscles. 98. Normal. Just gonna be alright. Mona turned on her side, throwing up green sludge onto the tiles. Ditto grinned an angelic baby grin. And that's what happens when you eat cow food. They cleaned Mona off and put her in the cot. Sleep is what she needs now, said Ditto. Better than any medicine. Cosmo could have done with a few hours himself. A lot had happened in the minutes he'd been awake. But there are a few things he needed to know. Who are you people? He asked. And what's going on here? Stefan was preparing what was left of his bouquet with tape. We live here, so I think the question is, who are you? Fair enough. Cosmo Hill. When you found me, I was escaping from the Clarissa Friend Institute for the parentally challenged. Ditto laughed. Cosmo Hill. You were found on Cosmo Hill, right? Yes, that's right. The orphanages have been using that old trick for centuries. I once knew a man from San Francisco called Holden Gate. Guess where they found him? Marshal Redwood will be looking for me in Ziploc. Ditto shook his head. No. As far as the authorities are concerned, you are dead as your friend, Cosmo. I worked in the orphanage sick bay for a couple of months before I found out what goes on in there. All the orphanages and the other human trade institutes use micro-trackers in your paws to keep an eye on their residents. The rooftop generator will find any traces in your skin. You are clear, clean and clear. A known person. Cosmo felt the worry lift from his shoulders like a physical weight. Now it's my turn. Who are you? Who are we? Ditto pointed dramatically at Stefan. This is Stefan Bashkia, a second-generation Salad City native of Russian descent. I'm Lucien Bon, also known as Ditto, due to my annoying habit of repeating whatever people say. And Mona Vasquez, I believe you already know. So we know each other's names, but what do you do? Ditto spread his arms wide. We, Cosmo Hill, are the world's only supernaturalists. Cosmo grinned weakly. What, you don't like clothes? Stefan couldn't help smiling. That's naturalist, Cosmo. And nobody does that anymore. Not with the ozone layer spread thinner than cellophane. We call ourselves Supernaturalist because we hunt supernatural creatures. Not me, interrupted Ditto. I'm a medic. I'm trying to heal people, that's all. I'll leave the hunting to Stefan. He's the one with police academy training. Cosmo glanced at the sleeping girl. What about Mona? She's not police. Not with that tattoo. No, agreed Stefan. Mona takes care of transport. She's had some training in that area. Cosmo nodded. So far, everything had been straightforward enough, but he felt that his next question would open an entirely new world. Those supernatural creatures, what are they? I suppose you mean the blue ones on the rooftop. A frown cut a slash between Stefan's eyes. Exactly. The parasites have been preying on us since God knows when, sucking the very life from our bodies. You know. You've seen it. Not everyone does. You call me a spotter? Stefan took a seat opposite Cosmo. He was a charismatic figure, about 18, with haunted features. His jet black hair stood in unruly spikes, and a pink scar stretched from the corner of his mouth, giving the impression of an impish grin. An impression that did not match the pain in his eyes. Eyes that were probably blue, but to Cosmo seemed blacker than outer space. It was obvious that Stefan was the leader of this little group. It was in his nature, the way he slouched in his chair, the way Ditto automatically turned to him, even though the Bartoli baby was several years older. There aren't many of us, said Stefan, looking Cosmo straight in the eyes. Cosmo made an effort not to look away. Not enough to be believed. It doesn't help that most spotters are kids. Maybe our minds are more open. Ditto is the only adult spotter I've come across. Well, if you can count Ditto as an adult. Oh, is Stefan making an actual joke? Said Ditto, reaching out to punch Stefan in the side. Not actually funny, but not bad for a first attempt. Stefan grasped the side in mock agony. You've never seen the creatures before that night on the rooftop, have you, Cosmo? Cosmo shook his head. He would have remembered. The sight usually comes after a near-death experience, and I think what happened to you qualifies as a near-death experience. About as near as you can get, added Ditto, wrapping the plate on Cosmo's head. Usually, the sight goes again just as quickly, continued Stefan. But sometimes, when the new spectrum is opened, it stays open. Sometimes for a week, sometimes for good. You could lose the sight tomorrow, or in 10 years, or never. You're a rarity, Cosmo. Your choice is to be a rarity with us. But it will do some good. Or go back to Clarissa Frayne. What choice? Cosmo would take his chances with 1,000 parasites before returning to the orphanage. A person can only take so many medical experiments. I'd like to stay. Good, said Stefan. You'll need courage and determination to be part of this little family. Family, thought Cosmo. I'm part of a family. Stefan used the word lightly, but to Cosmo, this was a very big deal. We're family? Stefan hoisted Ditto off the ground. Yes, this grumpy little man is Granddad, and Mona is our kid sister. It's a dysfunctional family, but we're all we have. For all anyone has. Sometimes it seems that we can never win, but we save who we can. You, for example. If it hadn't been for you, that parasite would have sucked you dry, and no one would have ever known. They can suck us dry? Of course. It's what they live for. Cosmo shifted on the stool. Then they could be here any minute. Stefan's good humor disappeared. No, this is the one This is the one place you're safe. We insulated the walls with hydrogel. Parasites don't like water. There's even gel between the glazing. But as soon as we step outside, Stefan shrugged. Then we're fair game. Things have changed over the past year, explained Ditto, opening a bottle of beer. He drank deeply and belched. A little blonde boy drinking beer. It was a bizarre sight. Ditto's right, said Stefan. It used to be that the parasites would only show up at night, at the scenes of accidents or at hospitals. They would find someone on death's door and leach the remaining life force right out of them. The doctors never suspect a thing. It's how they stay hidden for so long. That monster you've had on your chest the other night probably sucked out 5 years off your life before he popped them. Cosmo rubbed his chest instinctively. But now, nobody is safe, said Stefan bitterly. For some reason, there seems to be even more of them. The rules have changed. They can strike anytime, anywhere, at anyone. The parasites come calling if they sense even the slightest injury. Cosmo swallowed. So how do you fight someone like that? How do you kill ghosts? Stefan pulled a lightning rod from inside his jacket, spinning it between his fingers like a cheerleader's baton. With one of these. They want energy, I give it to them. Ditto snatched the rod. Show off, he said. There are various projectile options on this thing, depending on which cartridge you choose. A certain kind of slug sends the parasites into overload. You saw the results. These are called shockers, a slug initially developed by a weapons company as an alternative to the taser. Even if you do miss, the charge is enough to injure the smallest person, unlike the shot Stefan gave you, which could have barbecued a wild boar. Cosmo remembered the creature on his chest, explaining it to a cloud of blue bubbles. Or you can choose regular non-lethals, gumballs, shrink wrappers, and so on, continued Ditto. The last thing anyone wants to do is hurt someone, but sometimes we need to buy a little time, and non-lethals can really help us out. Cosmo blinked. I understood about 60% of that. Stefan stood, buttoning his overcoat. That's more than most people understand. Ditto, would you give Cosmo the tour? I have to go out for a while. He tucked the bouquet inside his overcoat, heading for the elevator. Cosmo called after him. One question. Stefan didn't turn around. Make it quick, Cosmo. I know what you're doing, but why are you doing it? Because we're the only ones who can, said Stefan, tugging the cord on the elevator grill. I'm inside a cartoon, thought Cosmo. This is all a graphic novel. So I'm turning the pages right now and say, this is too weird. Who could believe something like this? And he thought, I know how I can believe. Subscribe to Fixture Productions, and you'll know more. Stefan was a police cadet 3 years ago, said Ditto, tossing his beer bottle in the recycler. His mother was on the force too. She was one of the city's chief trauma surgeons. After she died, he spent a year in the widows and orphans home. When he got out, he spent every dinar of the insurance settlement on this place. Cosmo glanced around. The building was not luxurious, even by Northern standards. The Cosmo Army issue, the paint was bubbled with damp, and the windows hadn't seen a cloth in years. Not exactly a bat cave. The what cave? Never mind. The blond boy pointed to a bank of Mongol computers stacked on a workbench. The latest crystal screens set side by side with last century monitors. Most of the stuff is black market. We observe satellite sites, waiting for disasters. What? You hacked the state police sites? Ditto chuckled. The state police sites? No, thank you. We're in too much of a hurry to wait around for the police. We hacked the law firms. It made sense. With lawsuits being so costly, most corporations hire private teams of rapid response combat lawyers to beat the police to accident sites. Ditto turned his attention back to the room. We all have a bunk. Basic stuff. But it's a place to lay your head. And you just happen to have a spare one for me? Ditto sighed. A spare one for you? Well, no. That was Splinters. He used to be one of us. He couldn't take the visions anymore. He left the city 6 months ago. He lives out of town now. He wears blue lens sunglasses. Never takes them off. Are you a spotter, Ditto? Spotter? Yes, we all are. But with me, it's about Bartoli's side effect. Mona told you about me, right? Yes. And how'd you find Stefan? Ditto frowned. Stefan had a accident a few years ago. I was in an ambulance that picked him up. The world's shortest paramedic. That particular hospital made a big deal of hiring a Bartoli baby. Maybe you've read about me on the Satnet. Cosmo shook his head. Well, anyway, when we were picking up Stefan, he was babbling about a blue creature sucking the life out of his chest. I couldn't believe it. Until that moment, I thought he was crazy. So I visited him at the hospital, and we took it from there. When Stefan decided to set up our little group, I quit my job without second thought. Ever since then, we've been saving the world together. One more question. Ditto shook his child's head. One more question. With you kids, it's all questions. What's Stefan doing with real flowers? The flowers? Well, Stefan will tell you when he's ready. Cosmo's heart sank. He was almost part of a group. Almost, but not quite. The LED on the plexiglass switched from red to red, and an alert began beeping gently. Well, that's not walking around for today. The car needs another 8 hours to do its job. You in pain? Cosmo nodded. Ditto pulled a plain plaster from his pocket. The rumpled tab looked about 10 years past its sell-by date. Here, there's still a bit of juice left in this. He peeled off the adhesive backing, slapping the pad on Cosmo's forehead. How's the heartbeat? Your ticket took quite a hammering. Ditto placed his hand on Cosmo's heart, and suddenly the pain disappeared. The pain, it's gone. How'd you do that? Not me, the pad. One of my own concoctions. I get plenty of opportunities to put my medical training to use on this job. And Stefan trained in the police academy. Ditto grinned a grin far too cynical for one of his apparent years. Yes, he specialized in demolition. Tomorrow, do I get to be a spotter? Asked Cosmo. Ditto nodded at Mona, who was snoring gently in a deep but untroubled sleep. No one can teach you how to be a spotter, kid. That's what you are. But that innocent-looking girl will teach you what to do when it's time to put your natural talent to work. Stefan left the warehouse on Abracadabra Street through what looked like a little used side door. In fact, the door was well oiled and alarmed, but to the casual observer, the creeping rust and stacks of rubbish made the entrance seem obsolete. Outsiders were not to know that the rust was carefully cultivated and the rubbish stacks were on casters. With a simple push of a button, the entire mound still slid aside, revealing an entrance wide enough to admit a large truck. Not very high-tech, but sufficient, as long as no one tried to recycle the rubbish. Stefan opened the door a crack, slipping into the satellite city dawn. Sunrise used to be orange, but now sunrises were a multicolored affair, as the sun's light illuminated whatever chemicals were in the smog that particular day. Today the smog was deep purple, so that probably meant pesticides. The air would stink by noon. Still, it was better than red. Nobody ventured outdoors without a mask when the smog was red. The street vendors were busy even at this hour, firing up their mobile braziers and barbecues, ready for the breakfast trade. It was too early for the gangs, though. Hoodlums tended to keep vampires hours. The streets would be relatively safe until late afternoon. Stefan bought a pizza from Carlo's kitchen and made his way towards the crematorium. Pizzas were a new fast food craze. A calzone stuffed with pasta shells and various sauces. The perfect food for a person on the move. Stefan walked along Journey Avenue, keeping his eyes on the pizza. In West Side, people would steal the food right out of your mouth. It was a sorry state of affairs. If this was the state of the future, Cosmo would take the past any day of the week. Stefan was in a bad mood, and it wasn't just the smog. In spite of all his efforts, the group had taken in another stray. Okay, so the kid was a spotter, but he couldn't have been more than 14 years old, and he had absolutely no experience of surviving in the city. Mona was young too, but she was streetwise and gutsy. Cosmo looked like the streets would eat him alive in minutes. Stefan already felt responsible for the boy, though he had no desire to be. He was barely old enough to be responsible for himself. It was one thing to risk his own life in pursuit of the parasites, but to put himself else in danger was something else entirely. especially someone as green as Cosmo. 5 blocks down, he arrived at the Solace crematorium. The building was inevitably pig iron gray, but the manager had made an effort to cheer up the place by having computer graphic angels flit up and down the facade. Stefan went around back to the Hall of Eternal Rest. He swiped his residence card and passed through the turnstile. His card activated what appeared to be a wall of mirrors, but in fact was a 10-story carousel of small glass boxes. The magnetic strip on his swipe card summoned a box in the top level. He followed its progress through the rows, twinkling down the levels to a vacant booth on the ground level. Stefan selected the no music option on the touch-sensitive screen and entered the booth. The box slid from its compartment onto a velvet cushion. "I don't like this, Mom," muttered Stefan, abashed. "Velvet and fairies, but believe it or not, there are a lot worse places than here." The box was 6 inches square, transparent, with a brass plate on the front. The inscription was short and simple. 7 words. "Dearest Mother, much loved. Gone too soon." Stefan pulled a bunch of flowers from beneath his overcoat, laying them on the cushion before his mother's ashes. "Lilies, Mom, your favorites." So Stefan's spiky hair had fallen over his eyes. It made him look much younger. We picked up another spotter, Mom. He's a good boy, sharp. He saved Mona tonight. A quick thinker. Definitely supernaturalist material. But he's just a kid. No sponsor, right out of Clarissa Frayne. Stefan rested his head in his hands. But even with Cosmo, there were too many of them. Every day, more and more. They come out in the daytime now, you know. Even if you have the smallest cut on your arm, you better watch out. Nobody is safe. Every night we pop 100, and the next day there are a dozen new blue demons to take their place. Stefan's young brow creased with the worry lines of a man 3 times his age. Am I crazy, Mom? Are we all crazy? Are the parasites even there at all? And if they are, how can a bunch of kids ever hope to fight them? The others think I'm their leader. I see the way they turn to me, as though I have all the answers. Even the new boy, Cosmo, is looking up to me already, and he's only been awake for a few hours. Well, I don't have any answers. There are more parasites every day, and all we can do is save a few people at a time. Stefan rested his head in his arms. He knew what his mother would say. Everyone you save is someone's son or someone's mother. When you save them, you save me. If only, thought Stefan. If only I could have saved you. Then everything would be different.